Hello and welcome to another episode of Geek Private Practice. I haven't done one of these in a while, and I've been doing that a lot of panels, and I'm so excited to just geek out with people that I totally forget to introduce myself. So, hello, I am Dr. Elizabeth Sanchez Servisu from Psychology for Geeks, and again, we're doing another interview for. Wait, what did I call it? Geek Private Practice. And today we're talking to someone very cool. We met a while back. We have done a couple of collaborations before, and I kind of forgot I had asked him to be part of this for like about a year when I stopped recording. But we are here and we're actually recording this, so I'm very, very excited. Would you like to introduce yourself real fast
Sure.
for everyone?
Hello, I'm Dr. Sobin, clinical psychologist, the nerd therapist in NYC. And I'm really excited to be here as well. I remember when we were sitting down in San Diego and talking about this. I think that's when it was. And that was years ago. I think that was two San Diego Comic-Cons ago already at this point.
Yes, it was almost two, yeah, because the next one's coming up now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a private practice down in the financial district of Manhattan. I specialize in the treatment of OCD and related disorders. So things like anxieties, phobias, panic disorder, social anxiety, skin picking, hair pulling, and the like. And I throw a geek therapy lens on it to incorporate fandoms and popular culture into the course of psychotherapy.
Oh, wait a second. I don't think in my head I just sort of assume, but what is the name of your practice?
It's Sobin psychology.
Oh, okay. Wait, I knew that.
Yeah.
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 But
So
in my head, because in the social media, you are the nerd therapist.
the nerd therapist in NYC.
Yeah, and then so like that's how I don't know.
Yeah,
That's
so like I have two different ways that I like market myself. Like I the specialist I have two different specialties, as it were. I have like the whole nerd therapy, geek therapy, superhero therapy world, and then the OCD world. So I specialize in that's like my clinical specialty. Well, with also like an incorporation of geek culture onto that. So I have a lot of geek therapy-esque clients, but I also work a lot with OCD clients as well.
Great, because now it's sort of like in my head. Actually the other day I was talking to a friend. She was a part of something. We did a collaboration on something, and I was like, I need to put her last name in there. And then I was like, I've asked her like 3 times already. I was like, what's your last name? Because I don't I
Because
don't
you know people
care
from
what your last name
you're just
is.
like, oh, you're
Like,
Yoni, or you're
yeah, like I just know you, but like a specific way, and that's kind of like how you are in my brain. And
right.
then
No, I
I'm like,
totally
last
get
names,
that.
what are those?
Totally get that.
Yeah.
That's really
So
funny.
now
Yeah.
I
So a lot of people don't know that I specialize in OCD and related disorders. So anything that's like an exposure therapy based treatment is what I do. It's my jam. But a lot of my clients don't like they don't do geek therapy stuff. They're not geeks, or they're not self-identified geeks or nerds or whatever. And they just don't want that kind of therapy. So I'm like, okay, that's cool. We can do traditional exposure therapy, and that's just it. But then I have a couple of gamers and D&D players and tabletop role-playing games and stuff like that.
So before we get into that, because like now I'm super interested.
Okay.
Learning more about OCD is one of the things that I've been trying to do for the past few weeks. But we'll set that aside for a second. How was your start? What is your I guess your hero journey towards like becoming a wait, no, that's not what I'm saying. What I usually ask is, what's your origin story as a
What's my
geek slash
origin
nerd?
story as a
Yeah.
geek nerd? So I would say the first thing that really stands out to me. So I had this friend at home when I lived back home with my parents when I was much younger. His name was Alex Kantrowitz. His name is Alex Kantrowitz. He's an author. He wrote a book himself, but I'm not here to promote him. His dad had a Marvel encyclopedia on his shelf. And every time I would go over to his house, I always remember like going over there and like pulling the Marvel encyclopedia off the shelf and like reading it and being enthralled by this. Like I didn't collect comic books as a kid, but like I always thought this was like the coolest book on the shelf. And I remember when anytime I'd go over to his house, I would pull it off and I would read it. And like even like when our friends were like playing outside, sometimes I'd be sitting inside like taking a look at this book. So that was like part of my origin story. Another part of it was waking up in the morning, before school, and like going downstairs at 6 in the morning, or as early as I would wake up, to go watch Sailor Moon and Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah.
A show that I've thought about rewatching recently. I've thought about rewatching Sailor Moon because it was like so much fun. And then in high school, I really geeked out about Lord of the Rings. I would go see those movies. I saw them like 15 times in theaters. That's maybe a slight exaggeration, but like somewhere around there. I think the numbers for Fellowship, Two Towers, and Return of the King respectively were 12, 13, and 14 times in theaters. Um, yeah, and I would go to the movies by myself as a teenager to watch Lord of the Rings.
Well,
Um,
listen. Those, if you needed to watch something or you wanted to watch something that many times, that is one of the movies, because every time you watch it, you get something else out of it because they're so
exactly.
long and detailed.
And
Yeah.
it's so, they're just so wonderful. They're just like amazing pieces of artwork, and I would geek out about that. And I'd sit at home when the extended editions came out. I'd sit at home with my DVD player, and I would push play, and I would watch the extended editions, and then I'd watch the extended editions with commentary, and then I'd watch the behind the scenes footage, and I'd watch it all. I just consumed everything that was Lord of the Rings for like a good 5 years. And I still, to this day, I've been going to see them. So in New York recently, the Lord of the Rings have been playing in concert. They've been playing it with a live accompanying orchestra,
Oh wow.
and it's like the greatest thing in the world. So I've been going with some friends. We went to go see the Two Towers together. We have tickets to go see the Return of the King, and it's just so great. I just geek out about it. It's wonderful. So that's like my origin story as a geek. And then I incorporated that into my private practice. There was a year that I went to Comic-Con, and I was walking the tables. I was there like really early, and there was a guy there, Ryan Fisher. He was selling this graphic novel called Torchlight Lullaby. I don't know if you've ever read it or not.
I have not.
It's a great graphic novel. He was telling me about it. I was telling him what I do, and I told him I'm a therapist. This was back in it must have been like 2017 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, which is a while, maybe even before that, but somewhere around 2017. I was telling him I was a therapist, and he was like, "Oh, I wrote this graphic novel. It's a story. It's kind of about trauma. I won't spoil the ending for you, and so I won't spoil the ending for you. But it's a story that has a lot of like mental health themes in it. It's about this little girl whose dreams open up a portal into the real world, and
Mm-hmm.
these monsters come through, and she has to go into the portal and go into her dreams, close the door, and it's like really a story about like facing your own demons and your own monsters and stuff. Excuse me, and stuff like that. And I was like, this is perfect. I should incorporate this into my private practice, because
Mm-hmm.
I was working with a client who was struggling with some stuff, and so I did. And it was like, this I can't believe this is a thing. And this was like just as like geek therapy was starting to take off, and I was just discovering this whole world of geek therapists out there, and like everyone being interconnected. And I think it was before the Facebook group existed, and it was like phenomenal. And I discovered Dr. Travis Langley and Dr. Janina Scarlett, and I'm sure you know these names.
Mm-hmm.
And became friends with them, and started doing Comic-Cons and presentations all about like the psychology of nerd culture and geek culture. And it was just absolutely wonderful, and it's been an amazing journey.
Okay, there's one thing I do want to ask you though, because I see sometimes you advertise on your page, and this is one of the things why I'm like, why are you guys so far away? Like, because I'm in California, you're like in the complete, like at the other side of the country, and I'm like, why? But I know that sometimes you work with like local comic book shops or game shops to do like
Yes,
special presentations. Can you
yes.
tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure, yeah, of course. So there, when I lived in Brooklyn in Crown Heights,
Mhm.
there was a local comic book store there called Anyone Comics, and I would go in there and I would just chat with the owner. He was just opening up. He was a new comic book store, and we started to get talking about my private practice, and he was like, "Yeah, sure, you can advertise here," because I was thinking about like going around to comic book stores and just leaving my business card there, because my
Mhm.
business card has geek stuff on it. has written stuff on it. And so he said, sure. And then we got to chatting, and he was telling me all about these different comic books that have mental health themes, and he would recommend different things to me. And then before I knew it, I was doing a talk there in his second shop. He opened up a second store called Everyone Comics. And he asked me to come give a talk, and just like about mental health, and we just had a chat. There's just the two of us, and then we did another one recently at the store in Crown Heights. It was very sparsely attended, but it was a fun time. So I've done that. I've given talks at local Comic-Cons. I don't know if that's also what you're asking about.
Yeah, we can hear about. I mean, because I kind of know, because I've talked to you before
Right.
about it, but other people might not know.
Right. So for sure. So that's at the local comic book stores. I've called up some other stores, but they're not as keen on like doing events, I guess, which is a little bit disappointing. So like I'm still trying to work with them. I'm like trying to figure out a way for me to go there and just like chat about mental health and mental health awareness and geek culture and the intersection of the two and stuff like that. And I've also done talks with Dr. Scarlett at professional organizations, at the Association for Contextual and Behavioral Sciences. Dr. Scarlett and I did a presentation many years back. I guess it was before COVID, so I think it was 2019, on superhero therapy, on her superhero therapy and a clinical application of that. And then I've done talks at local Comic-Cons, various fan expos, Fan Expo New Orleans. I think we did Chicago one time, or I was part, and I know Dr. Langley goes around talking at all these cons, promoting his series. And I've had the pleasure of being able to work with him and just be on various panels at various cons, just talking about the psychology of various cult characters and fandoms. And it's been absolutely wonderful.
Oh yeah, okay. So one of the things that I sort of like been trying to advocate lately is pretty much exactly what you're doing, or what you have been doing for a very long time, which is sort of like go out to the community and talk to people about mental health. Because I was researching something else, and I came across this article that was actually it was a Mexican article about people in Mexico or whatever, and they were
Right.
talking about sort of like how it doesn't mental health in Mexico doesn't quite work just yet. So it's still something relatively new. There's still a lot of stigma associated with asking for help and going to see a therapist. And part of that is because the therapist oftentimes just sort of like open up their office, and then they sit in their offices waiting for people to come to them. And so we don't have any sort of interaction with the community. So the community doesn't know anything, doesn't know about mental health, what it is, or like psychology, anything like that. So this article was pretty much encouraging people, be like, hey, if you want your communities to come to you and be more supportive and be just healthier and be more mental health conscious, you have to go out there and talk to them, because otherwise how are people going to come? And then I started thinking about it, and I'm like, I live in California, but it's a very rural place, and there is a lot of Hispanic families living here, and it's very similar. Like, I have been doing a lot of sort of like community presentations lately. uh since it's a rural place, I've kind of chosen like 3 different cities where I'm kind of like trying to promote mental health. And like you said, sometimes we get a good turnout, sometimes it's 1 or 2 people that show
Yep.
up for these events, but every time I talk to someone there, it's kind of like this whole, I need help, or like, what is this, I'm really interested in this topic, but just don't know how to go about it. And because again, we live in a very rural place, resources are so scarce, essentially non-existent. And I usually do the same presentation in English, and then I do it in Spanish. And then oftentimes, like I was telling my parents today, I did one, and I just noticed that a lot of people, they just want to be heard. They
Mm-hmm.
just want somebody to hear their story.
Right.
And I'm like, yeah. So I'm like, I just stop like mid presentation, and I'm like, yes, go ahead. Tell me your
Yeah.
story. because that's what they want. And then I'm like, and that's what they need. And I'm like, we don't have that. So in a lot of like cultures, there is a big sort of like community element. And I think we can see it a lot in like geek culture, with like all the cons and stuff, and like the different fandoms. Like it's a big community that we just come together and we talk to random strangers about, like, for me, my love of like Avatar: The Last Airbender, or whatever it is that they're into. And today I saw this lady. I was exiting this restaurant with my parents. I saw this older lady. She was wearing this anime character on her shirt, and I just wanted to say, I love your shirt. And I was like, wait, but I didn't want to be like, but then like part of me was like,
Right.
because I was like, wait, does she know what she's wearing on her shirt? Because that happens sometimes.
Right,
Like,
that they're just wearing something and they're like, oh yeah.
yeah. And then so I was like, I don't, should I say something? At the end, I decided not to because we were running late anyway. But I was like, yeah, like I don't like we don't really have that gay community here, so I'm trying to build that. But again, community just in general is something that we all need to have, especially for a lot of people who immigrate to this country. They leave their whole community, behind, and then they move here, and sometimes they end up, you know, becoming a part of a very toxic community, or not being able to find a community
Right.
to help support them. So that's sort of like what my nonprofit is trying to do. But again, I'm just so happy that you are doing those things, that you are going out and reaching to the community, because
I'm trying, that's for sure.
yeah, and it's a process. I
it's
I
it's a real
understand that it's a
process. It takes
process.
it takes
Yeah.
time, it takes weeks, it takes months. It took weeks of going back and forth between me and anyone comics for us to like find a date that works, because one night they're hosting a drink and draw, one night they're doing Magic the Gathering, and one night they're doing this, and one night they're doing that, and the other nights I'm busy and I have patients until 8 p.m. And it's just
Mm-hmm.
this whole thing, this whole rigmarole of finding a time that works for everyone. But in the end, like, it's totally worth it. Like when we had that one at Everyone Comics, it was a real good turnout, and I met some great fellow therapists there, who I've collaborated with since, it's good for the comic book store. It's good for business. It's good for mental health awareness, just in general, just like having these kinds of conversations and people hearing, what it's like when you're working on a psychiatric unit, or what it's like when you're working in private practice, and just like what kind of things do you treat, and do you take insurance, and all sorts of important questions that like people in the community are thinking about when they're looking for a therapist, like insurance. Like, I take insurances. That's something that makes me unique and stands out as a therapist, because a lot of therapists don't take insurance. So like, it's important to be able to connect with the community and know what's important to the community, know what issues are important to them, so that I can best serve the population, as best as I can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, it's that thing of like, just the community doesn't know what happens behind the scene. The only sort of like I get exposures of mental health that they had is whatever they see on the media,
Right. Which
and
is
that's
therapists
never
having sex with
great.
their client. That's just
Yeah, it's
therapists sleeping with
never
their
good.
clients. It's like, that's not what mental health is. It's not what happens. Like, you come in and you talk about your story, and you get to feel seen and heard and understood, and have that sense of like, someone gets me, and someone, I can be vulnerable, and I can share in this space, and I can share things I wouldn't necessarily otherwise share with other people. I can talk about suicidality, or I can talk about fears and things that I'm afraid of, like, that I can go in and do that. That's crazy. For me as a therapist, to be able to help that person, just share about what their lived experience is. Like, so many people go to hospital programs and day programs and treatment programs, and like, it's really amazing for people to be able to have that space to talk about what they're struggling with,
Yeah,
and
one of the
cry.
things, yes, and one of the things too is sometimes it kind of falls to us to repair the damage that's been done. So if somebody went to a therapist or a program that was not a good fit for them,
Right.
and then that sort of like was like, yeah, why seek help if nobody believes me? Why seek help if they're just gonna tell me to X, Y, and Z, and that's not helpful, or like nobody listens to me, which sadly does happen. So it kind of falls to us to be like, and look for someone else, like just the same way that you look to a grocery store, or like just a clothing store, and you don't see the prices that you like, or you don't see something that feel comfortable in, go somewhere else. Same thing for, for therapists. And like part of me, that's why I'm like hoarding all these therapists and like, because okay, I have like the memory of a goldfish, so I'm like, but if I like, collab with you or have like a way for me to look back at me like who is interested in this, like, and now my my YouTube is like that, like all these people that I've collaborated with. And I'm like, yes, this is how people can sort of like go through either like my or social media or website or like even or YouTube channel and check out like the therapists that are practicing in their area. Then we can reach out to them, because again, I'm in California, this like a big, United
The
States,
big
there's so
country.
many people. And also like even if I am now practicing, but my schedule's full. I can't take anybody anymore, right? So
Right.
then I'm like, but if I can't, maybe somebody else has an opening,
For
somebody that
sure.
might be a better fit or like just as good of a fit. So I'm like, that's why it's so important for us to sort of like connect with each other and trying, um, you know, to collaborate in some
Yeah.
way and figure out like, what our styles of therapist is. So then I can, send people your way. Uh, yeah. So yeah, that's, I don't know. Essentially, we're just talking about the same thing. We're all agreeing with each other
Yeah.
that it's good to go out in the community and that mental health is great.
Where in
Um,
California are you based? You're based where?
so I am. So I actually only do telehealth. So all of California.
Okay. Okay.
My clients are all over California, but I am like like smack middle, like Central Valley, like right in between Fresno and Bakersfield, which are the two biggest cities. Otherwise, I'm like a very sort of like rural, remote area. Uh,
Gotcha.
I was talking to my brother about those cartoons that we kind of grew up with, and you mentioned like Dragon Ball, and then I was like, yeah, I grew up watching Dragon Ball and Power Rangers. Those were the
Yes.
two. Yeah, yeah.
I
And and then when we moved to the US and we grew up with Cartoon Network, and we used to watch Courage the Cowardly Dog sometimes.
mhm.
And then they live in like, what is it, nowhere, that's like the name of their place, and I'm like, that's where we live, like there is nothing. If you look outside, it's like nowhere. um but yeah. Okay, so now we geeked out about a lot of things, but how did you integrate sort of like all the fandoms that you love in your therapy sessions?
That's a great question. So it all started when I took Dr. Scarlett's superhero therapy course,
Hmm.
and I did the training, and it was an 8-week training, acceptance and commitment therapy based. And I was like, okay, there is a way to do this successfully. There is a way to do this evidence based, as opposed to just like throwing it in willy nilly and just being like, oh hey, like before I took her course, like I never talked about these things with clients. I never thought to talk about them with clients, and then I took her training course, and she was like, yeah, you can ask clients like what their favorite fandom is, like who their favorite characters are and stuff like that. And then I started to think about it through the lens of an origin story. Like instead of a precipitating problem or a precipitating event or what brought you into therapy, it's like, what is your origin story? How did you get to where you are? Let's look at,
Hmm.
instead of thinking about it as a timeline, what's your origin story? And so I started to incorporate that into therapy a little bit. And it was all thanks to Janina's work. I have to credit her. I can't say I came up with this on my own in the slightest. It was all Dr. Scarlett. I started to ask those kinds of questions through that kind of lens, and before I knew it, I found out that a lot of my patients were geeky and nerdy and had their things that they nerded out about, whether it was gaming or whether it was woodworking or whatever the case may be. Things that they really got passionate about, and
Hmm.
had all these, they had their mentors, and thinking about who your mentor is and how does that influence how you think about things, and where does your source of wisdom come from. And then my favorite way to incorporate it is like, I don't give homework assignments anymore. I give quests and challenges. And that's what I send clients on, like as a CBT therapist, as a cognitive behavioral therapist each week. Like you get a homework assignment, but you don't get a homework assignment, you get a quest or you get a challenge. And you get to earn experience points in therapy. There's no like prizes at the end, but like, the prize is really your mental health and your mental well-being and your mental wellness and your sense of freedom and independence and all things like that. But clients go out and they complete challenges each week, and they complete quests, and there's the side quests, and then there's the main quests, and it just makes therapy more fun. as, to be able to go out and do quests and earn experience points and face demons and face monsters and face and have battles. Like with exposure therapy, like there's the traditional lens of doing exposure therapy, which is like you rank things on a hierarchy, and this is item number 1 on the hierarchy, this is item number 2 on the hierarchy, all the way up to item number 10, which is like a really difficult thing to do. Or you just have monsters that you face, and you have your little Goombas. For those of you who are familiar with Mario, and then you have your Koopa Troopas, and all the way up to facing Bowser. Or that's just the basic framework that I use because so many people are familiar with Mario. But like you can adapt it to any fandom. You've got your low level bad guys, and then your higher level bad guys, and then your different level, your ultra whatever it is, all the way up until the boss fight, which is like the hardest thing you've ever done. And then you get a new boss fight when that thing has become easy. Like you're like, okay, I can do this, I can beat this guy. So I'm a big exposure therapist. So I do a lot of exposure therapy work, whether that's with panic attacks and panic disorder, where it's like body sensations, or whether it's social anxiety with different social situations, or whether it's OCD with just various triggering contamination situations, or obsessive ruminative loops and thinking about your feared outcomes and stuff like that. And it's just so much fun. It's just so much fun, and patients have a good time when they're doing therapy. It's like, all right, we're gonna go do a challenge now. We're not gonna go do an exposure, we're gonna go do a challenge, we're gonna go on a little quest. So I incorporate in that way for the most part when I'm doing therapy work, and when I'm doing like, how did we get here, it's the origin story.
Yeah, and like somebody asked me, they were like, why psychology for geeks? And I was like, I don't, because it's fun. Like that was my only response. I was like, I don't know, because it's fun, and it really does work. And like a lot of the times I have, for the most part, very similar to you, where like I work with a lot of clients who prefer a more sort of like traditional approach. But sometimes I always ask about hobbies. That's part of sort of like the intake, like
Right.
the initial intake that I do with everyone. And when I ask about that, I'm like, okay, I work with a lot of adults that are like, I don't have any hobbies. So I'm like, okay, we need to work on that. Or like if they do have some sort of hobby, then I'm like, great, more of that, because that's the easiest way for me to be like, that's self-care. If
Right.
you love doing it, just do more of it. Make sure that you're doing it consistently. Make sure that that you're calling out friends. Make sure that, again, that you're doing all these things,
That
because
you're
you get
writing
like a supportive
poetry,
community.
that you're
Yes.
building with clay, that you're writing music. Like I have clients who
Yes.
just make music, and I'm like, you need to, we need to help you make more music. And I like to write poetry, let's write more poems. And so like sometimes I'll give an assignment that, like, a quest that's you have to write a poem about this topic, or I'm asking you to write a poem about this topic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that, again, that just makes it, there is like you said, there's more interaction, because now therapy, it's fun. It's not like this big scary place. It's more like, oh, every week I have a new challenge to overcome, and I have someone there to support me and guide me through the whole process, right?
Yeah.
Which is a lot different than what we typically see on TV, where like this is the couch and someone's like, yeah, how did that make you feel? And I'm
Right.
like, I I mean, I do ask that sometimes, but it's
All
not
the
as
time.
often as people think. Or maybe
Right.
like I just ask it in a different way, where it's just not like that. The one thing that I do say consistently is, it depends. That I do
Right.
that say
Oh,
that a lot of very often.
for sure, yeah, because like
Yeah.
everything depends on the circumstance, and
Hmm.
depends on what's going on and what the background is, and where you want to go and what your values are. Yeah, I
Hmm.
don't feel like I say it depends a lot. What do I say a lot in therapy? Um, oh, I can't even think of some of my catchphrases right now because I'm not sitting in the therapy room. It's weird. Um,
You said catchphrase, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna use that. I never thought about using it like that. I was just like, oh, same old, same old. I'm like, oh no, but it's gonna be like, now it's my catchphrase.
I've used some of my colleagues' catchphrases. I've quoted them. I have a colleague who says "verbalize to normalize,"
Hmm.
which I really like. I do say a lot. If you could have, you would have, but you didn't, so you shouldn't have. Um,
That's a good one.
I do say that a lot, to help people understand that they're doing the best that they can, and
Mhm,
oh, I could have done better, but if you could have, you would have done better,
mhm,
because that's how it works.
mhm. Yeah.
People do the best they can with the resources they have, and sometimes we can beat ourselves up, but that's not going to get us anywhere. So it doesn't pay to assume that you could have done any better. You did the best that you could with the resources that's what I say a lot. You did the best that you could with the resources you had. I say that a lot to clients. You did the best that you could with the resources you had.
Yeah, we often beat ourselves up over like the little mistakes that we've made when we give so much, like we have so much compassion and love for someone else going through the same thing or like doing the same thing that we did. We're like, oh, don't worry about it. You overcome it. It's okay. It's not, it's not a life-changing situation. But when it's us that is in the situation, like, oh no, I am the worst. Like our self-talk is so bad a lot
Yeah.
of the times. And I'm like, we just pretend you're like your own best friend.
Yeah.
Like how do you talk to your best friend? That's how we need to talk. You need
Yeah.
to talk to yourself. Yeah. So the other thing that I know you've done a couple of times is you've done this really cool thing that I wish I could have like attended when you did it. And you've done, I don't know if you've done it since then online, but you did a sort of like a meditation, didn't
Oh,
you?
yes.
Yeah, Lord of the Rings meditation.
I
Yeah.
did. Yeah, I did. I did some meditations online. I haven't done one in a while, and my social media manager has advised me that we should do more of them. So thank you for the reminder. I appreciate it, and he appreciates it as well. That I've been doing like some guided meditations on Instagram Live, of just like sitting there and just like meditating, for being mindful for a couple of minutes at a time, and just like through a geeky lens, and just kind of a lot of the times I used the Force. So it wasn't a Lord of the Rings meditation. It was a Star Wars meditation.
Oh, okay.
Um, but I could do a Lord of the Rings one. There's no reason why not to. But like Star Wars.
Okay. I just saw, I was part of this panel a while back with
Mhm.
I was like, I don't know why I was there because it was like video games and I'm like very new to the fandom just in general. But somebody was saying, oh yeah, there's such good like music to certain video games. I'm like, Lord of
Yes.
the Rings has one of the best music soundtracks out there. Like
Yes.
you could totally just like play that on the loop all day,
I,
every
I
day.
I used to, when I was studying for tests in high school and
Mhm,
college. I had these CDs that I would play. In college, it was by that time it was all MP3s. But
mhm,
I had these CDs that I would pop into my CD player of the Lord of the Rings soundtrack and the Star Wars soundtrack, and I made my own
mhm.
little covers for them with track listings and everything. It was really intense. And I would listen to those on repeat. Like I knew you could play me a part of the soundtrack, and I could tell you where in the movie that was, and it was great. Those soundtracks are phenomenal,
Mhm,
which is what makes listening to the movies live so freaking great.
mhm.
Because you're getting like it's like a 200-piece orchestra. I'm telling you,
Uh-huh.
if this ever comes to California and you get a chance to see it, I highly recommend that you go, if you're even a remote Lord of the Rings fan. Um, but yeah, so I did a Star Wars meditation on Instagram Live. It's a Force meditation, so it's like getting in touch with the Force and using the Force as we can experience it. Because we're Jedi, and we're Force sensitive, and how to get in touch with your inner Force, to listen to the sounds around you, listen to the sights, see the sights, feel the feelings, feel the sensations, smell the smells, taste the tastes, and really like get in touch with that current moment, what's currently existing, and basically feel the energy running through you, the
Mhm.
energy of the present moment, and get in touch with your body, and notice your heart rate, and notice your sensations and stuff like that. So I should really do another one of those. I didn't do ones for Star Wars Day this year because it fell on a Saturday, and I was just not working on the weekend. But yeah, it's fun stuff.
Yeah, and I know I've seen them sometimes when you did them before, and then I'm like, oh, that's so cool. But I'm always so busy like
It's
doing
it's
stuff, so
so
like
it's so hard.
I
It's
can
so hard
never.
sometimes to make time to do these kinds of things.
Yeah. Uh, do you happen to have like a pre-recorded one that people can listen to?
I don't, but I should make one. That's a great idea. I'm gonna do that. Make a Star Wars meditation. Noted to myself. I don't have one that's pre-recorded. Um, Well, there was a recording somewhere, but I don't think it's accessible to the public. I think you have to pay to get it. It was through. I have the script written up, so I could just read that and let me get back to you on that one.
Yeah, I mean, it would be so cool. And I will help, with letting people know that that's a thing they can access. Because again, I am not an expert on everything. I could never hope to be. And there's so many fandoms I know very little of,
Same.
or frankly, sometimes I'm not that interested in them.
Right.
But there are other therapists who are. And so it could be so helpful for people because I know there's like tons of fans, for everything. So yeah, I feel like I tell my brother sometimes I feel like I'm just like an instigator. I'm just like, yeah, you should do that. Yeah, that'll be fun. But it really would though. I found this I forgot her name now, but she's done a couple of like yoga uh things where like it's just gone through sort of like I think it's a couple of different movies that I liked. So she's gone through like a side quest or like throughout the whole movie and like you have to do different poses. It generates like sort of like the story. And that was really cool. That's how I got sort of like more interested in yoga. And doing sort of like meditations like the ones that you mentioned are a lot more interesting because otherwise my ADHD brain is like, oh, look at over there, that's shiny. Or like, why am I doing this? Like, I don't want it anymore. But if you're sort of like, narrating or you're like, oh, remember that one part? Because, okay, one of the things that I love about movies in general and why I like watching Lord of the Rings movies is the scenery. Like, it's so scenic. I love that. And it's like just nature. I love
Yeah.
all the nature that they show. And again, that's kind of why I love like the Ghibli movies or like anime, because they always have this one shot that is like a few seconds of just like the neighborhood or like people walking through a field or like the sunset for like no it has no reason why it should be there in
Right.
terms of like the context of the story or like that episode, but it's just I'm like it's so pretty. And yeah, that I love a lot,
So
and
anime is
that's
anime
how I
is
can
one area where I want to improve. A little side quest that I want to go on is watch more anime. My next show is actually going to be Avatar because I haven't watched it yet. Yeah, it's literally next on my to watch list. Because I just got through Doctor Who. I just finished up with Doctor Who, and I'm almost up to date. I have to watch the newest episode. But my friends got me into Doctor Who, and I was like, okay, the show is actually pretty good. It's pretty psychologically minded. It's pretty
Mhm.
it's pretty it's pretty fun. And my other friend has been telling me for the longest time, and one of my patients has been telling me that I need to watch Avatar, and I haven't been able to talk. And they're like, I know this, and they've said to me like, I know this is gonna fall on deaf ears because you haven't watched Avatar yet. And I'm like, you are correct, but like, let's talk about it. Let's use this to help you grow. And so they've used Avatar a little bit in their own journey. Like they've incorporated it themselves, which is really nice. So like I have to get like I got to get into the anime sphere a little bit more.
Yes, Avatar is for a lot of people it's not really considered anime, but I
Anime,
would say
right?
it's kind of like a gateway to
Right. It's
to anime.
anime light.
Yes, yes. But I mean, I love it, but so I'm super biased. But yeah, you should watch it
Okay.
definitely, and then hit me up when you do, and then we can talk about it.
Okay. All right. That works.
We will make it like another recording where like, you just talk about sort of like your reaction to watching Avatar for the first time and
We should do
what
that.
you.
I should do that live also. I should do some
Yes,
reactions, some reaction
yes, we should
videos to
do that.
Avatar.
Because there's a lot of episodes in Avatar where like they talk about like why like we need balance in our lives, and there is one where like legitly where they talk about sort of like the two opposing forces that you're trying to fight and how to like overcome them. And yeah, it's just there's so much to it, and that's why I love it, and I highly recommend anybody watch it. But yeah, wait, now I got like super
Um,
sidetracked because we
we,
started talking about this, and I'm like, I don't know what else to ask.
we were talking about the mindfulness practice, and like the things that I've done. So yeah, so I've done some of those. I've done some of those on Instagram Live. And really a lot of the work that I do now is like just incorporating this into private practice and like doing a little bit of advertising on the side, but really like incorporating it into my clinical work because I'm so busy. That it's like I get patients and they're seeking me out specifically because I like your therapeutic approach. I like what you say that you do with, like, you can show me a meme and tell me how that tells me how you feel, as opposed to, like, like, yes, I encourage you to use your feeling words and stuff like that. I feel XYZ. But like, also, like, you can show me memes. That's fine. That works.
Mhm.
Like, this is how I feel about this. Like, oh, I get that. Okay.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of times like where I tell my brother, I'm like, I wish I could just take whatever's on my brain and like show you. Because I don't have the words to like express what's going on. So oftentimes it's like, oh, that meme, or that one part in like that one movie, that's exactly what I'm thinking about, or how it feels. So yeah, it's you don't necessarily have to like be a super mega fan of any sort of fandom, but just sort of like allowing clients to express themselves in this way, which is a little bit different. And it can be kind of scary for people if they don't fully know, what it's like. To
Yeah,
be part of the geek culture, or what geek culture even is, because I feel like it can be very overwhelming for someone
definitely.
who has like no exposure to any of that. And then some of us are very, very passionate about what we love, and sometimes we go on full on cosplay, and people don't really understand that, or
Yeah,
why are we doing that, or why are we collecting toys when we're adults or whatever.
they're not toys;
So
they're
yeah,
action figures.
some of mine are actually toys. But see, that's one of the things that I like. I want to Part of the reason why I'm doing this is because I want to encourage people to, how in psychology, when we're in school or even afterwards, we are sort of told that it's best when we sort of are culturally sensitive with the clients that we're working with. And I'm like, geek culture is a
It's a
culture
culture,
that
yeah,
we
for
kind of
sure.
have to be aware of. And I'm like, there's a great side to the culture. Sometimes the community is so supportive. Sometimes it's like the one anime or like the one movie that got you through parents divorce, or like a really difficult time in your life. And sometimes it's the only way that you know how to do self-care or connect with other people, right? So therefore we have to talk about it in therapy to encourage people to do more of that. And again, that's why I always ask about like, what are your hobbies, whether I'm doing sort of like elements of geek culture or not. Because sometimes I had a client once where
Oh,
they just said, oh, my
lost,
hobbies.
I lost you there for a second.
Oh, okay. What was the last thing you heard me say?
So the last thing I heard you say was when something gets you through a really rough time, like your parents' divorce or something like that, and then it disconnected for a second.
Oh, okay. Then or like it was like a specific movie that got you to a really difficult time in your life. Then we need to talk about that in therapy, because it's good, right? But if you're not aware, or you never ask about people's hobbies when you're in therapy, then it's really difficult. And also because a lot of us, we're like introverts, and we have been made fun of for the hobbies that we have, so we don't want to talk about it, because what if you also do? This therapy is like my safe space, and if you don't understand what I'm trying to say, then it's going to be like another person sort of like judging me for,
Rejecting and
yeah,
and
rejecting
and putting,
what I
and putting
like.
you
Yeah.
aside. Yeah,
Yeah, and sometimes it's like I talked to one of my clients, and I was like, hey, what are your hobbies? And she like, she's so lovely. She was like, oh, sometimes I play on my Switch. And I was like, dude, me too. What do you play? And I got super excited about that. And then she just like, her like just reaction automatically was like, oh, you understand where I'm coming from. Like, we have never played together. We have never, but I now know a little bit about you, right? Just because I know what she's playing, or I played what she's played before. And that gives us like an instant connection,
right,
and again, that just makes people feel more comfortable, and also us as therapists, because we are constantly talking to people about like their their life difficulties, and we don't really know them. They're also
right.
strangers to us, right?
Yeah.
And i was I was giggling to myself one time, because I was sitting in my office, and because I work with kids a lot, I had a lot of toys and like stuffed animals on like the chairs and sofas and stuff. And I had a baby Yoda, that I really like to sort of like lean on as I was eating. So I kind of like had it like next to me, and I would just put my hand on it, and I would like rub it or something. And then I was like, oh my gosh, here's me like a grown up, and I'm just like playing like hugging this like stuffed animal. And it was like, but it makes me feel comfortable. And I
Yeah,
think that makes the other person also feel comfortable,
yeah.
in that setting. Yeah.
In my
So
office, I have this giant crocheted Bulbasaur that I got at WonderCon. It's the cutest thing. I don't have a picture of it, but it's this. He
nice.
takes he takes up the whole chair. He's like he's there. And I'm like, this is the emotional support Bulbasaur. You can squeeze him. You can poke him. You can hold him. You can cuddle him. You can do whatever you need. Just don't stick your fingers through the crochet holes. That's the only rule. Um, and I have a client who crochets, and so we started talking about like her crocheting hobby, and like and stuff like that. And it's just like it really opens up any sort of connection. My client who saw the Bulbasaur, he was like, oh, you like Pokemon too? I'm like, yeah, I'm the nerd therapist in NYC. Of course I like Pokemon. I grew up with this. Like, and so we're talking about Pokemon and how he incorporates that into his self-care. And like he's a competitive Pokemon player, and like
Oh
he
wow.
battles, and like he's way more knowledgeable about Pokemon than I am, that's for sure. But like it's a way for us to bond and connect, and really get to understand like aspects of his life that are really important to him.
Mhm. Yeah, that's great. So again, that's kind of why I want to make this sort of like videos and interviewing people about how do you do it in your practice, and like to what extent you do it. Because I want to encourage people who are going through sort of like through the grad programs now, or are maybe working at an organization, or thinking about creating their own private practice. So that being said, what sort of recommendations would you have for someone who is thinking of opening up their own practice?
That's a great question. So, hire an accountant. Step number one: hire an accountant. Definitely hire an accountant. I mean, you could do it on your own, but I recommend hiring an accountant. Find an accountant who you trust. So that's step number one. Step number two is like market yourself. Don't be afraid to put yourself out there. Advertise yourself, advertise your business, and especially even if you're a geek, especially if you're like a geek and a self-identified geek or nerd, like you can put that out there. Like people might look at you funny, but like you're gonna get known in your community, and there's a whole community out there of geek therapists who you can network with and collaborate with and send referrals to and get referrals from. And people are gonna want that. So like if that's something that you appreciate, do that. I recommend taking insurance. It's a hassle, but you will get a lot of clients that way because people want to go through their insurance providers. Um, and like don't be afraid to network with psychologists and psychiatrists and other professionals, and like you're all in the same space, and you're all trying to do the same thing, and people are looking for referrals all the time. Like I have questions that I ask in my intake that mean that like I'm not going to see a person because of whatever they're struggling with, and I'm looking for someone who specializes in eating disorders, for example, because I don't
Mhm.
specialize in eating disorders, but I'm always looking for therapists who are specializing in eating disorders. I'm always looking for therapists who are taking insurance because I get calls like, do you take my insurance? No. Okay, click, end phone call. It's like I can't help this person at all. But
Mhm.
if I say that no, but I do know some therapists who do, to be able to tell them like, okay, here's a person you can call, and I can help this person on their journey a little bit more. So take insurance, even though it's a hassle. What else? What other advice do I have? It doesn't matter whether you're doing telehealth or in person. Like you're going to get clients both ways. So don't be afraid of telehealth. Don't be afraid of in person. Even after COVID, like you can still run an in-person practice if that's what you want. My practice is like 40% virtual, 60% in person for the most part. Um, or maybe it's even closer to 50-50, but whatever. It doesn't matter. What else? What other advice do I have for clinicians starting a private practice? Network. Call psychiatrist's office and say, hey, I'm a therapist in your area. I'm looking to set up a meeting with you for 15 minutes to chat. Because clients always need a lot of times need medication, and medication adjunctive treatment with medication. What else?
And one thing I will add to that, the networking thing, I was always scared of doing it because a lot of my my classmates, they were going to like professional events like even before we graduated, and I was like, I don't want to go. What am I gonna say? I have to wear like stuffy clothes. I hated the idea of having to network, and I'm like, I'm just gonna go through life without ever networking. And then I took the class with, again, everything really is because of the class that I took with Dr. Janina Scarlett in school. That was like, hey, this is another way you can do therapy, and I was like, no way. And then I made it my whole life.
Yeah.
Yeah, essentially. And then now I'm like, I sometimes I feel kind of bad because I reach out to people. I don't know, like I know we met like online somehow. I don't
Right.
know if
Yeah.
I who reached out to who. It's been a while, but usually sometimes I like see someone's like I think I've reached out to 3 people now where I really like their like Instagram or like their counselor, like their business name, and I'm like, we have to do a collaboration. I have no idea who you are or what you do or where you're located,
And I'm sure they
but
appreciate
we
it.
have to, because okay, one of them was the Jasmine Dragon. That's in Avatar, and I was like, yeah, no, duh, that's a brainer. And then the other one was like Alchemy Counts to Me. I was like, that sounds so cool. Like, let's like we kind of have to. So I was like, yeah, that's kind of how I reach out to people sometimes.
You got to do it. Like you just, it's a different version of cold calling, and like some of them are going to work, some of them are not going to work, and like it's going to be great. It's going to be amazing because
But
you're
one thing I
you're
will say,
connecting with
I
people.
have never had one person or one therapist that I contacted that has rejected any sort
Right.
of collaboration or that has been super mean to me. Everyone has been like, if anything, it's been like, oh, I'm kind of busy. So, like, you have to wait a little bit, or like, there's going to be some finagling, like trying to figure out when we're both available. But like, everyone has been super lovely. And even before I got my doctorate, I was already reaching out to people to like do collaborations because I was already on social media. So I like, again, that was sort of like one of my fears when I was in school. So I'm like, yes, no, do it. And there's a lot of people that are there, like, that are willing to help and collaborate with you, or guide you in sort of like your journey.
Yeah.
If you're trying to figure out what you want to do, what you want to study, anything like that.
For sure, yeah, and I found like it was a little bit hard initially breaking into like the professional sphere with like all the professionals, and I don't know why I'm putting that in quotes because they are professionals, but like all the suits and the ties and the people who are wearing all the fancy clothing and like
Hmm.
doing all the professional networking who are like, well, this isn't evidence based or whatever it is. Like, well, actually, it kind of is evidence based a little bit. There's been some research on this, and there's more research coming out, and there's more research coming out every day. So like I did get a little bit of like side eyes or like side looks from some of like other people, like, oh, that they're like, oh, that's cute, and like then when the conversation moves on to like more clinical stuff, but like, and that was a little bit rough. But at the same time, like there were plenty of people like, oh, that's really cool, and like I have a lot of connections. One person said like, yeah, your business card still sits on my desk because I remember it so well. Like it's still there. Like it stands out. Like my business card, where is it? Do I have one over here? Yeah. So this is one of them.
Oh, that's so cute.
Yeah. And then I have another one that's Batman in an eggshell. And it says face your fears. Like
Oh.
break out of your shell. And then I have one that's Lego Batman and Lego Superman, and it says in the middle #relationships matter. Um, so like my business cards stand out. I've made them stand out. Like, don't be afraid to show your inner geek, your inner nerd, your inner superhero, persona. But yeah, like networking is like, it's huge. It's really huge. Like go to your local networking events, like of your local chapters and stuff like that. I just went to a networking event last Thursday, where I got to see my director of internship training. She was there.
Mhm.
Um, and like we got to connect again, and it was really, really nice. And there were some students there, and so I got to connect with them and some other professionals, some psychiatrists. Got to connect with them. It was really great. And then I'm going to another networking event next month, on a Friday night, which a lot of them are happy hours. So like you register for the networking event and you get a free drink. So like that's not bad, but for those people who drink out there, because some
Yeah,
people.
and I think even if you don't really talk much or you feel shy, just hearing people's conversations, I think can
Yeah,
be very helpful.
yeah,
Or
and it's
like, grabbing other people's sort of like, business cards and stuff.
yeah, and it's nice to like be in a space where like everyone's talking about mental health. Like you're not in a room with like there are some lawyers here and there are some banker people here and there are some tech people here. It's just like everyone is talking about mental health and everyone is
Hmm.
talking about their lives, and like it's just everyone talking about one thing, and it's like it's a place that you can geek out about psychology together. Um,
Hmm.
and like it's a little community, and that's what it is, because everyone's been through a similar practice. Oh, your trainings, where did you train, and what were you doing? Which hospitals did you work at, and what private practices have you worked at, and what kind of population do you serve? And it's just great.
Hmm. Wait, one thing that I don't know, we might have to cut this if I like
Okay.
got it wrong.
Okay.
Uh, so is I think last time I like stalked you on your website, you had an intern working for you, right?
No, I don't have an intern working for me. I
Okay, I was
have.
wrong.
Okay.
Because I was like, oh wait, I was gonna ask you about that if you take interns.
I don't take interns. I have a clinical care. I have a small little team, so maybe that's what you're thinking of.
Oh,
Um,
maybe.
I have a small team who works with me. I've got a social media manager. He helps me manage my social media presence. And I have a clinical care coordinator who like handles some of the administrative tasks. So maybe you might have interfaced with her at some point. I don't think so, because I think we always direct. I think we always networked like one to one. I don't think you've ever messaged with Chanel. Um,
No, I think I don't know. I might have just like made it up because goldfish brain sometimes, if I don't remember well, like I just make it up as I go. Yeah, I don't
That
know. Never mind.
I do not have an intern, but on that note, I am thinking of hiring somebody. And yeah, I'm in the process of making that happen. I'm looking for like licensed clinicians who want to work with a geek therapy lens, or just don't want to run their own practice. They want to work with somebody else. And that's like something that's in the process of starting to happen. I have to like build up a case referral or referral base for that to be able to work. But it's something that's in the works.
Okay, awesome. The other thing I was going to ask you is we kind of already talked about this, but are you open to collaborating with other geeky professionals
Of
or
course,
to doing consultations with
of
people?
course, 1000%, 1000%,
Yes. So there
definitely.
you have it. If you were wondering, you wanted to reach out, but you were kind of shy, you heard it from him. He said yes. So please do reach out if you have any questions or you have an idea, or because sometimes I reach out to people and I'm like, we should do a collaboration. And they're like, what were you thinking? I was like, I was not. I don't have any idea what we should do. I just want to geek out with you. That's what I want to do. So let's come up with something.
Let's do a Lord of the Rings thing together.
Yes, yes,
A
I
Lord of the
would be
Rings
so
show.
down for
I
that.
have I have another colleague who would happily talk about Frodo and his trauma. I love talking about Gollum and addiction. Um,
Oh, yes, 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 yes. Wait, hold on. Let me write that down because I will forget.
okay, and I will try to remind you also.
Yeah, because I'm having I don't know when this is coming out, but maybe by then we'll have some of my other. Because right now I'm in the process of planning a bunch of like different panels that I'm doing, and one of them is on horror as a in general, and like
Oh,
mental health.
cool.
And then I'm a scaredy cat, so that's not something I ever watch or wanted to interact
Right,
with. I avoided that section of the library or the section of like the movies back
right.
when Blockbuster was a thing. Um, so like I was like I don't watch those things, but I love hearing the stories, like hearing ghost stories and stuff like that. I get so scared, but then I was like, okay, I want people to like told me how they incorporate some other things into, their practice, or how they talk to people that also love horror. And then at first I was like, I only have two people for the panel. That's not gonna work. And then I was like, I just went crazy, and I was like, I'm just gonna message everyone and be like, hey, do you want to be a part of it? And now I have too many people for one panel, so I have to split it into two. So
Oh boy,
if you know people who are into Lord of the Rings, 'cause I don't know that many, please let me know, or like
I do.
have them come my way, so then I can write them on my list for a panel.
I'll throw us in an email thread together, and we can get something going.
Yes, that would be awesome. So you guys have that to look forward to as well. Not
Yes,
only this awesome interview, but also a future Lord of the Rings panel that we'll be doing. I really want to. I wish I could do it live, but my internet is so sucky, and like my setup does not sort of like lend itself very well for to do like live events with a lot of people in the call. So they have to be pre-recorded for now, but eventually one day I want to be able to do them live, that when people can ask questions as well,
right.
and be a part of the whole community and stuff. Anyway, that I don't want to take too much of your time
That's good.
on a weekend, especially when you're resting. But thank you so much for joining us today and
My
sharing all
pleasure.
your stories, and for volunteering
Of course.
to do another panel with me. And yeah, oh, before we end, are there any like special projects that you're working on, or anything you want to direct people towards, in case they have any questions or want to collaborate with you? Where can they reach you at?
Of course, yeah. So the easiest way to reach me is through my website, sobinpsychology.com, and Instagram handle nerd_therapist. Um, and my practice is located in the financial district of Manhattan, so I'm on the East Coast. So if you have someone who's looking for a clinician on the East Coast, specifically in New York, I can treat clients anywhere in New York. Currently, that's really it, because SciPact is not a thing yet in New York, but it's on the legislation, so hopefully that will be soon. And projects on the horizon. So I do want to start doing some Twitch streams, which I haven't started doing yet. Yes, okay.
Me too.
So I
Well,
want to
I've
start.
done some, but they were kind of lame. So I'm like,
Yeah,
I'm trying to make them better.
it slowly but surely is the way to go on that one. I've heard,
Yeah.
and like advertise that. So I want to do that. I'm planning on doing some Instagram lives in the future, so stay tuned for the nerd_therapist channel. I don't have a YouTube up and going, so like that's a nothing.
Yet.
Yet. And other than that, like I'm just building my practice slowly but surely. You can reach out to me. You can find me sobinpsychology@gmail.com. That's the best way to reach me, via email. And I'm open to doing collaborations and what I can't find another word for collaborations
And panels.
and panels.
And
Yes.
if you guys are in sort of like, I guess, in the area, and you guys have a game shop, or a comic book shop, you guys can reach out to him and do special events as well.
Yes, I'm open to doing that.
Yes, okay, so the best way to make sure that you don't miss any of this is to follow him on Instagram, and we will have all of that on the description of this video. The way you can just click, and then it will take you there. And so for any of the future sort of things, if you follow on the socials, then you'll be up to date on what's happening. So when eventually the Twitch streams come, or the YouTube channel shows up, then you will be one of the first to know.
Yeah.
That being said, again, thank you so much for joining me today,
Thank you, Elizabeth.
and I will let you know eventually when I know that this video is coming out. You will also know.
Okay.
And for everyone, thank you so much for making it to the end of this video. And if you guys have any questions for the Lord of the Rings panel, or just for Dr. Sobin in any sort of capacity, write it in the comments, and we will try to, or any ideas of how we can collaborate. I'm always looking for that. That's another thing that you can also write in the comments.
For sure, yeah.
We talked a lot about Lord of the Rings, so it would be fun, I think, if you also talk about what your favorite movie is.
Yes.
And before we
Or
end, what
your
is your
favorite
favorite
scene.
movie?
Okay, so it's a complicated answer to this question, but my favorite movie is The Fellowship of the Ring. I love The Fellowship of the Ring. I think it's a very fun movie. It's not like
Mhm.
crazy over the top action and everything like that. Like it's my favorite movie. The one that I've seen the most is Return of the King. But my favorite movie is Fellowship, and I just love how I love it. It's like it's the origin story for Lord of the Rings. I mean, The
Mhm.
Hobbit is the origin story for Lord of the Rings, but like you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And it's just like how everything comes together, and it's just a great story,
Mhm.
and it's enthralling, it's engaging, it's funny. It's just my favorite of the three movies.
I think I will have to second you on that because I think that was sort of also my introduction to Lord of the Rings. Well, technically, it was I read The Hobbit,
Right,
but I was still sort of like learning English at that time, so I don't remember anything of it, but I do remember reading it. It was like a really thick book and one of the very few like books that we had in our tiny school library.
right.
Um but yes, the Fellowship of the Ring, that's sort of like the one, and like it's the iconic one where like everyone has like, like the little I was gonna say like the little like scene where everybody's like going through the like walking through the mountain. Is that the
Mhm.
one?
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
yeah, yeah,
That's like one of my favorite scenes. Like just seeing them like walk through the mountains with like the sunset and like that. Yeah, it's just so
right.
great.
It's great.
Anyway, yeah.
So when I was
Uh
reading The Hobbit, so
mhm.
funny little story. So the first time I tried to read The Hobbit, I put the book down because I thought I was like, I'm done with this. Like these dwarves' names are stupid. Ori, Dory, Nori, Boom, Biffer, Bofer, Bomber, Boing, Gloin. And I was like, this is stupid. And I put the book down and I never picked it back up. And then I
Mhm.
finally picked it back up, like when I was older, and I was like, this is great. And now I listen to The Hobbit to go to sleep.
Yeah. So
I put the other book on and it just knocks me out.
when I became a big reader because that's and I think that's how I learn English like pretty fast because I would just read. And that's why my pronunciation is not the best sometimes because I learned the word by reading, so I don't know how it's pronounced.
Right,
But like a lot of my friends will be like, because we had to take like this like AR test, like read a book and then like take a test and then like accumulate so many points in order like for it to count for towards our English class. Um, grade, and everybody was like, just read a Dr. Seuss books, they're so easy and fast. And I'm like, they're made up words, I'm barely learning English, like they make no sense, I have no idea what's happening in the story. And then I will pick up something like Lord of the Ring or like The Hobbit, and I'm like, this makes more sense. Like, there's a lot of like also made up words there and
it's,
like
it's
a
actually it's
completely made
actually
up
interesting.
language.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that because so there was part of my training was teaching individuals how to read. Individuals who spoke English fluently but didn't necessarily know how to read. They either had dyslexia or reading delays or whatever it is. And like one of the ways that we taught people how to read was with nonsense words because it teaches you the sounds of the letters and how to string them together in different combinations. So like we would make up words all the time and we would teach people to read using nonsense words. So it's actually kind of funny because my sister-in-law hates Dr. Seuss because of the nonsense words. And I'm like, this is how you teach your kids to read. They make up nonsense words because they're gonna make up nonsense words all the time. They're gonna go bippity boppity boo, and they're just gonna say things, and like they need to know how to read those words also.
Yeah, but they make no sense. And then I was like, but then like I think the way that I sort of like learned how to understand English was sort of like all the context clues in the
Right.
sentence. So if all the the whole sentence was made up words, and I was like, I have no idea what you're trying to say, I don't know what this story is. But then you give me like The Hobbit, and I'm like, it's super complex, and I'm like, I like this story, I can understand what this story is about.
Right.
Green eggs and ham, what is that? Like, makes no sense. So yeah, I guess it's just a different kind of fish that I need something different to learn. But anyway, thank you so much,
My
and don't
pleasure.
forget to
Thank
check
you.
out his website and Instagram. Again, everything will be in the description of this. And oh yeah, also don't forget to check out the Psychology for Geeks. We are pretty much in every social media you can imagine, except Twitter for some reason, because I couldn't get into it. I don't know how to like post things on Twitter, sorry. uh Anyway, but any of the other social media we are present at Psych for Geeks. You can check out our website as well, for lots more information. If you live in California, in the Central Valley, there's a lot of events that we're doing in person, so check that out. If you do not, check out, don't forget to subscribe to this channel, because we will have the Lord of the Rings panel here, and also we will have a Avatar: The Last Airbender uh, review of, like, when Dr. Sobin finishes it for the first time. Because I have another person who I recommended it, and they hadn't, like, we did a podcast episode with I did it. I was a part of their podcast, and I talked about Avatar: The Last Airbender, and they hadn't seen it, and I'm
Uh-huh.
like, how am I talking about this if you haven't seen it? And then so they finally watched it, and I'm like, yes, now we need to talk about what you think of it, because people need to know, and because we don't have that much content, so we're kind of living vicariously through people who've seen it through the first time, or people who are making like more content for Avatar: The Last Airbender. So yeah, don't forget to subscribe so you can watch those future projects as well. And
For
that being
sure.
said, don't forget to reframe and re-enchant your life. And we'll see you on the next video. Bye-bye.